Welcome my friends to a new episode of the World of Warcraft lore podcast series. Join me today as we embark on the story of the city of Eldre'Thalas, once a proud city of highborne elves. In today's episode, you will discover the reason for the division of Arathor and get acquainted with the centaurs that emerged from a sinful union in Maraudon. We will conclude today's episode with an epic war of the quicksands. So, join me today as I narrate a thrilling tale from over 1,000 years before the opening of the Dark Portal. Eldre'Thalas and the Binding of Immol'thar. Far across the sea from the Gurubashi Empire, survivors of the Great Sundering faced an uncertain future. They were called the Shindalar, meaning those who remain hidden. Nearly 10,000 years earlier, Queen Ashera had tasked them with safeguarding her most precious tomes. Led by Prince Tortheldrin, the Shindalar obediently followed their queen's orders. They ventured into the misty heart of Kalimdor's southern jungles, and founded the grand city of Eldre'Thalas. When the Great Sundering devastated the world, Eldre'Thalas narrowly escaped destruction, thanks to the efforts of Tortheldrin and his followers. They cast a powerful spell to shield the city from the Sundering's destructive forces. But saving their city came at a cost. The Shindalar discovered that the Well of Eternity had been consumed in the Sundering. Without this source of power, Tortheldrin and his followers found their immortality greatly diminished. The Shindalar fell into a deep lethargy and languished in their isolated sanctuary. To revitalize the Shindalar, Tortheldrin devised a plan. He constructed pylons in a damaged wing of Eldre'Thalas, creating a prison to contain a new power source, a demon named Immol'thar. Secretly summoning and binding the terrifying creature, Tortheldrin aimed to siphon the demon's power to rejuvenate his followers. Any objections were silenced once the other Shindalar experienced the demon's potent energy. Immol'thar's dark and volatile power proved more invigorating and addictive than even the Well of Eternity. The Shindalar reveled in their newfound power, but the danger of keeping Immol'thar among them was apparent. They devised a method to use the demon's power to keep him imprisoned, and for thousands of years all seemed well. However, the cost of maintaining Immol'thar's restraint grew exponentially. Nearly 9,000 years after the Sundering, the demon's prison reached a critical point. It consumed so much energy that the Shindalar were left with none to sustain themselves. Tortheldrin's seemingly ingenious plan unraveled overnight. The Shindalar not only lost their immortality again, but also became hopelessly addicted to Immol'thar's potent energies. Desperate to regain his power, Tortheldrin plotted with his closest allies, and ruthlessly murdered the other Shindalar. Tortheldrin's treacherous scheme succeeded, thinning the population and allowing the remaining elves to draw on Immol'thar's power indefinitely. With the Shindalar's numbers diminished, Tortheldrin and his followers abandoned much of their once glorious city. Eldre'Thalas fell into darkness and disrepair, and creatures from the surrounding jungles moved in to claim the crumbling elven refuge. The Fracturing of Arathor. As Tortheldrin and his followers retreated deeper into Eldre'Thalas, the kingdom of Arathor began to fracture. The once small trading outposts and cities, established after the Troll Wars, had grown into powerful city-states. Strom, which had once held sway over these regions, saw its influence decline. Kul Tiras, situated on the island Bastion, continued its maritime traditions, boasting the most significant navy in Arathor. Its daring captains explored the coasts of the eastern kingdoms, bringing back exotic goods and tales of remote lands. Kul Tiras' shipping and fishing economy surpassed that of its northern neighbor, Gilneas. Unable to match Kul Tiras' navy, Gilneas focused on strengthening its land-based armies and mercantile capabilities, becoming one of Arathor's most powerful military forces alongside Alterac, which dominated the Northlands. Gilneas and Alterac often combined their forces and led grand expeditions to secure the borders of Arathor. South of Strum and Cosmodon, they discovered the dwarves and the gnomes. The expeditionary forces marveled at the wondrous feats of construction and engineering that were Ironforge and Gnomirigan. The humans became quick friends with both races, especially the dwarves, who also shared their love of battle, storytelling, and strong ale. The three cultures engaged in rigorous trade, exchanging knowledge of smithing, mining, engineering, and even arcane magic. Over time, Strom's power dwindled. Hindered by rocky terrain and lacking resources, Strom couldn't compete with other city-states. Many noble families departed to the fertile north, founding Lordaeron. The nobles used their wealth to buy up large plots of land, some of which had been developed by earlier settlers. These areas included the Agamand mills, and the farmsteads owned by the Balnir and Saladin families. Lordaeron was also home to deeply religious ascetics who believed in the light, a cosmic power they claimed infused every living thing in existence. Many sick and elderly people traveled to religious communes in Lordaeron, hoping to find a cure for their ailments. Others made pilgrimages to the city-state in search of wisdom and enlightenment. Lordaeron's borders quickly expanded, and it matured into a proper kingdom. The noble families eventually renamed the heart of their flourishing nation capital city. Shortly after the Lords of Strom headed north, the last living descendants of King Thoradin, led by Falder, also departed Arathor. Sailing south, enticed by tales of a lush and unexplored land, they sought to start anew. The tales proved accurate. Thoradin's descendants settled in the southern land and established the Kingdom of Stormwind. With its natural protected harbor and nestled location among cliffs, this city-state quickly rose as a major power in the region. Strom, however, remained in the hands of a few persistent ruling families unwilling to abandon the old capital. Descendants of Igneous Trollbane, a legendary general from the Troll Wars, took charge. Over time, these families worked to rebuild Strom's dilapidated infrastructure and renamed their capital Stromgard. Despite their efforts, the city never managed to reclaim its former glory. Thoradin's vision of a united people was fading. Over generations, the city-states grew more distant and insular. Rivalries emerged as each nation turned inward, prioritizing its own well-being and showing less inclination to offer assistance to others. Maraudon and the rise of the Centaur. For thousands of years, the nomadic Tauren roamed the lush forests of Kalimdor, living harmoniously with nature and the elements. Among the many lands the tribes traversed, one held particular significance for all Tauren shaman, Mashanshi, or the loom of the Earth Mother. This sacred ground, nestled along Kalimdor's western coast between the jungles of Eldre'Thalas and the Stone Talon Mountains, was named in honor of the mythical deity believed to have created the world. Drawn by faint elemental whisperings, Tauren shamans became convinced that the Earth Mother herself dwelled beneath the meadows. For decades, they endeavored to awaken her through communion with the region's elementals and celebratory rituals. While their efforts succeeded, they soon realized the whispers didn't herald a benevolent Earth Mother, but rather echoes from Azeroth's violent elemental past. Emerging from a massive cavern beneath the grasslands, Princess Theradris, a colossal earth elemental, and descendant of the elemental ruler Therazane, made her presence known. In ancient times, keepers had banished most elementals to another plane, but some like Theradris had evaded this fate by hiding beneath the earth, falling into a deep slumber. Millennia of sleep weakened Theradris's mighty form, but upon awakening, she reached out to the verdant surroundings, siphoning their energies to regenerate her craggy form. This left vast tracts of land desiccated, prompting the horrified Tauren to later rename the barren plains Desolace. The sudden transformation forced the Tauren to scavenge for sustenance, disrupting their once harmonious existence. Eldre'Thalas, now awake and invigorated, became a dark presence in the region, setting the stage for unforeseen consequences that would impact Kalimdor for ages to come. The sudden and violent demise of vast, intertwined ecosystems sent shockwaves throughout Azeroth and beyond. Mortal druids and spirits in the Emerald Dream recoiled from the staggering loss of life. Cenarius's woodland son, Centaur, emerged from the dream to investigate. Resembling his father, Centaur traversed the physical world in the form of a majestic half-stag, adorned with supple vines and verdant leaves encircling his limbs, and great antlers. Wherever his hoofs touched the soil, dozens of saplings sprouted and blossomed into lush forest groves over time. Centaur's investigation led him into the damp caverns beneath Eldre'Thalas, where he discovered Eldre'Thalas. Despite intending to imprison the strange creature, Centaur became enchanted with the princess. The stolen life energies radiating from Eldre'Thalas enticed Centaur, and he became enthralled by her beauty. In turn, Eldre'Thalas found Centaur beautiful and resolved to do whatever it took to win his undying love. Aware of the influence she held over him, Eldre'Thalas claimed innocence, asserting that she meant no harm to the land and sought ways to restore the region's former beauty. Urging Centaur to join her cause, they could, together, succeed. Centaur abandoned his original quest and became Eldre'Thalas' mate, defying the laws of nature, driven by the love blooming in his heart. From this forbidden union, an aberrant race was born. The centaur whose barbarism would terrorize the lands of Kalimdor. The centaur possessed strength with horse-like lower bodies, providing great speed and burly humanoid torsos, granting incredible physical power. Their penchant for brutality overshadowed all other traits. Witnessing the centaur, Centaur recognized the depth of his sin. Despite attempting to connect with his offspring, he couldn't bear their presence. The centaur, sensing their father's loathing, erupted into a blind rage, and the savage horsemen struck Centaur down in a tragic confrontation. Centaur's death shattered Eldre'Thalas' heart. The elemental princess chastised the centaur for the senseless murder, and they grew forlorn, realizing they had hurt their beloved mother. Begging her forgiveness, they promised that from that day forward, they would honor and revere their late father. Eldre'Thalas later entombed Centaur's spirit in the great cavern where she had once slumbered. The centaur named this site Maraudon, treating it as holy ground ever after. The centaur quickly proliferated, spreading across Eldre'Thalas. They unleashed their wrath on the hapless Tauren inhabiting the area, forcing them to abandon their homes. Yet Eldre'Thalas' barbarous children did not stop in Eldre'Thalas. In the centuries that followed, marauding bands of centaur hunted down Kalimdor's Tauren, igniting a long and dark period of war. The War of the Shifting Sands. Since the last war against the Troll Empire, the descendants of the ahn'qiraj had remained hidden in their subterranean domains. The Mantid of Pandaria was the only active threat among them. Almost all of Azeroth's races had forgotten about the ruthless potential of the insectoid colonies, lurking beneath the earth. One such colony, the Quicksands, had taken root in the ancient fortress of ahn'qiraj. Originally built by the Keepers to imprison the old god Khotun, the enormous stronghold housed dormant insectoids within its lifeless sandstone corridors. The existence of ahn'qiraj had been lost to time, even to Ashera and her Night Elf Empire, which had once known of the fortress. Few living creatures dwelled near ahn'qiraj, partly due to the vast and inhospitable desert of Silithus that stretched out from the stronghold's towering obelisks. Rediscovery of ahn'qiraj occurred when Archdruid Fandral Staghelm initiated a quest to regrow the land of Silithus. He sent his warrior son, Volston, and a group of trusted druids to perform this task. As they traversed the scalding dunes, searching for hidden water reservoirs to transform the region into a lush forest, Volston and his comrades stumbled across ahn'qiraj. Some druids cautioned against entering the fortress, but Fandral's son forged ahead. his presence in the cold, dead halls inadvertently roused the dormant Qiraji back to life. From its prison beneath ahn'qiraj, Khatun became aware of the awakened Qiraji. The old god drove the insectoids into a murderous frenzy, with the highest castes of Qiraji organizing their lesser minions, the most numerous of which were known as the Silithid. These vicious insectoids took various forms, all obedient to the will of their Qiraji overlords. The discovery of the Qiraji shocked Volstan and his druid companions. After retreating from ahn'qiraj, they established a small outpost in Silithus to keep watch over the insectoids. Before their eyes, the fortress swelled with greater and greater numbers of Qiraji. Suddenly, a massive army spilled forth from the tunnels beneath ahn'qiraj. At the head of the swarming host were the Qiraji, directing their Silithid minions to engulf the surrounding deserts and spread into other regions as well. Volstan called for help from his father by this time. Fandral rallied a force of druids, sentinels, priestesses, and keepers of the grove to deal with the Qiraji threat. In the southern reaches of Kalimdor, the night elf host clashed with their vicious foes. At times, they managed to drive the Qiraji back toward the dunes of Silithus, only for the insectoids to mount a counterattack and regain the advantage. This ebb and flow continued for many months, leaving in its wake the broken corpses of elves and insectoids alike. The War of the Shifting Sands had begun. Fandral and his comrades established outposts across southern Kalimdor as they prosecuted their war. From these locations, they continued their brutal fight against the Qiraji. Eventually, the tireless druids and their allies managed to push the Qiraji back into the heart of Silithus itself. However, just as victory seemed within reach, the war took a dire turn. During a feint orchestrated by the Qiraji, Volstan was captured and torn apart before Fandral's eyes. Volstan's death shattered the archdruid and sowed uncertainty throughout the night elves' ranks. The Qiraji seized the opportunity and swarmed out of Silithus once again, pushing into the eastern deserts of Tanaris. In their fervor, they assaulted the sanctum of the bronze dragonflight, the caverns of time. The Qiraji's reckless attack spurred the bronze flight into action. Led by ahn'qiraj, they enlisted the help of the red, green, and blue dragonflights. The mighty dragons joined the night elves and helped drive the Qiraji armies back behind the walls of ahn'qiraj. Even with the mighty dragons joining the war, the Qiraji were too numerous to vanquish entirely. Fandral feared that the war would never end, and thousands of elves had already perished at the claws of the insectoids. Reluctant to sacrifice more of his people, he and the dragons devised a means to end the war immediately. They would lock the insectoids inside ahn'qiraj itself. The night elves and dragons gathered before ahn'qiraj to complete this task. Fandral called on his druids to focus their powers as one. Along with ahn'qiraj, the elves summoned a great barricade to close off ahn'qiraj. Outside the cursed city, the dry earth split wide, and a magical barrier of stone and colossal roots emerged. This impenetrable scarab wall towered high over the barren landscape, effectively sealing the Qiraji within their city forever. As a final act, ahn'qiraj forged two mystical artifacts, the scarab gong and the scepter of the shifting sands. The dragon entrusted the scepter to Fandral. Should the need ever arise to enter ahn'qiraj again, he could use this artifact to open the scarab wall. However, Fandral found no solace in ending the Qiraji threat, as Volstan's death still tormented his heart. In his rage, he shattered the scepter of the shifting sands, and the pieces became lost for the next 1,000 years. If you found this episode intriguing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating content from the World of Warcraft lore. Feel free to comment below with your thoughts, theories, or suggestions for future episodes. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Until next time, may your quests be legendary, and your adventures be epic.